So you guys, at this point, you're living on a farm, a couple 100+ acres, multiple horses. Cindy's training. Dan, you're out there. Dad, mom are out there riding regularly, boarding other people's horses, doing group events. Both of you are ministering at a church full time. Cindy, you're doing midweeks. Dan, you were doing the weekends, as well as specialized ministries, events, carnivals, etc. At the church, we had roughly, if I remember, like 70 on average towards the end there.
We were living an incredibly
very busy
life.
You were still involved to some extent with sales. You were helping one of your sons launch a business within the business you were in.
Yes.
You guys were spread thin for completely healthy, normal people.
That's right. We were too pressed for strong, healthy people.
So then came the sit down with the doctor, where they wanted to inform you that they felt you had Parkinson's. What was that meeting?
Let's talk about that. The day we went to the doctor, now it was scary to go, because our doctor had told us if you still have questions about what's going on, Dan, make an appointment with a neurologist. So I knew we were going to see a doctor that potentially could tell me something was wrong with me that was more serious than I'm just getting older and I got a shaky hand. And we were at the doctor's office. So we went that day, but we went together, and we were at the doctor's office I was with the doctor for 5 minutes when he looks across the table at me and asked me if I wanted him to tell me the truth. And I said, well, sure, I want you to tell me the truth.
I'm spending this money to feel better.
I wanted to say, no, don't tell us the truth. That doesn't sound good.
When someone proceeds what they're going to say without, can you handle it if I tell you the truth?
No.
You know you're about to get bad news. And he said, the truth is you've got Parkinson's disease. He said, no, the good news is that I think we're catching it early and it's treatable. And it's not life-threatening, although it is progressive and it's considered incurable. So he shared that with me that day, and that just really rocked my world.
How did that affect you? Like, if you're able to kind of put yourself back to the day you're at the doctor's office, if for those of you watching this who don't know Dan, he's known to be one of the stronger-minded and will-powered individuals you'll ever meet, for good, bad, or insanely worse. But, so you're there and you hear something that's completely, for the first time in a long time, out of your control. You can't fight, outthink, or outwit the diagnosis. Where does that leave you when you're leaving the office that day? What's that put you in?
Scared. I didn't say much. I asked him what I could do to battle this
PD.
Progression, yeah.
Battle the progression.
BattlingPD.com, right up there.
And he told me, he said, do you ever exercise? And at the time I was going to the gym about 3 times a week for about 30 to 40 minutes. And he said, well, the better physical shape you're in, the less impact the symptoms are going to have on you physically, and it'll slow the progression down. He said, you can take we can give you a medication that will start you on immediately that will help you improve with the symptoms. He said, but the most important thing you can do, and that you need to do immediately, is you need to reduce the stress level in your life. Because he said, he wanted to explain to me that stress increases the symptoms.
The severity of the symptoms.
It increases the severity. That's the right word. That's the word he used. Stress increases the severity of the symptoms and will cause the disease to progress at a much faster rate. So whatever you have to do to eliminate stress in your life, you have to go on a radical mission right now to eliminate stress in your life. And when he said that to me, I kind of laughed. I said, well, Doc, I pastor a local church, and I don't know if you've ever been a part of a church. You got 70, 80 people coming in every Sunday. I said that that's the definition of stress. And he said, well, that's fine. He said, my recommendation is that you resign ministry then. And, that was something I was willing to consider. But it seemed an absurd idea at the time because I pioneered the church. We weren't really connected to some large organization, so I didn't know who I'd ask to take the church. It just brought a lot of questions that had absolutely no answers, and it brought a lot of fear and uncertainty. That was the biggest thing that happened that day. Was I walked in a confident man, and I walked out an uncertain man, and that was hard to deal with.
How about for you, Mom? Were you with Dad at the doctor's office?
Mm-hmm.
So I know you're immediately every bit of Dad, stubborn, can do all of that. You're there with your mouth shut in the same attitude. Like, you're obviously having to be strong for him and encourage him. Like, where did that put you?
It's true, but something that is true, and Dad and I have discussed it many, many times in the last year and a half. And I haven't admitted it publicly before, but going into that convention, I felt that Dan and I were going to have to separate. I had really come to the conclusion, with all of the symptoms and the doctor assuring me that there was absolutely nothing wrong with him, his silence, the way he unplugged from conversations, the fact that I couldn't get him to respond to really communicate with me about things.
I was becoming more and more withdrawn.
Yeah.
And you thought it was
exactly.
a personal
and
decision
I
or something.
Me. I thought it was me. I thought, okay, well, what's going on here is he doesn't love me. He can't really say that to me without risking all of what he's invested in, which is church, family, all the rest. He can't bring himself to say that, but he's utterly unresponsive, and nothing I do is making any headway. And I think the kindest thing I can do to preserve myself and allow him to pursue the things he wants to do is to separate. I didn't know how I could do that with all of the church elements in place, because that's the kiss of death for ministry, for a pastor. And I didn't know how all that was going to work out, but we were definitely in a crisis. And I seemed to be the only one that was aware of the crisis. And so when we went to the neurologist, it sounds crazy to say, but for people who have seen these mental and psychological changes in their partner with PD, perhaps prior to any kind of a diagnosis, and you're just by yourself and you're wondering what's wrong, and if it's you, if it's all you. Dan's doctor, his primary care physician, seemed to think it was all me. And so I sat there in the neurologist's office, and when he actually named it, I cried because I knew it was true the instant he said it. I cried for what it meant for Dan, and I cried because what was happening to us actually had a name. It actually had been identified.
Did it almost feel like a relief knowing that something was causing this beyond you?
Yes, it felt like a terrible truth, and simultaneously the relief of 3 years of not understanding what was happening to the person that I love. And in reality, nothing can happen to the person that you love that doesn't happen to you as a couple. And it was a terrible relief. It was a painful relief, if ever there was one, but I knew that it had a name, and it wasn't just me, and that we could do things together that would help Dan manage what was going on. So it was awful, but it was glorious at the same time.
So there's so much more story to share in the midst of between that moment to today that we'll cover in the weeks to come. But in a brief statement, so that was your life, that was your level of busy and crazy hectic scheduling and everything. Fast forward about a year and a half. What is your situation now? Are you still on a farm? Are you still doing the same jobs in ministry? And what is your day-to-day now compared to then?
we resigned the church in what at the time was the most merciful way we could think of to do it. That's a longer story for another day. In the end, the transition was much more brutal than we would have ever anticipated or wanted to. It was much more brutal than the way we would have wanted to have it happen. We've sold the farm. We've sold all of our horses except 2, our personal horses. One of them is in the banner, the pictures on the front of this website, Dan with his horse, Arizona. And they're boarded.
She's still my horse.
And we're living in Athens. We moved from Oglethorpe County, which is about 17 miles away, into the east side of Athens. And overall, I think we both are really appreciating and enjoying our quiet life, our stripped down life, so much more.
So stripped down, I'd like you to touch on and just share the fact that, so the church, for lack of a better word, the church is gone. Dan is no longer working actively in the same business he was working in. Mom, you're no longer training horses on any kind of regular basis. You guys are no longer farmers dealing with chickens and geese and all of that nonsense. Mm-hmm. You're now living in a smaller home inside city limits of Athens, Georgia. Yeah. You're now both not with a full-time career. You're both exploring writing and blogging and things of that nature. So just real quick, we have about 2 minutes left. Talk about what fills your day right now to some extent. You were told to take stress out of your life. So what does that look like now? What is your day to day compared to what it used to be?
Well, your day-to-day has changed radically. Mm-hmm. Because now you don't have to get up and feed the horses, feed the chickens, feed the dogs.
Maintain the farm. Mow the grass, do the fencing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, now she doesn't have anything to do all day.
Over the years, the responsibility for the upkeep on the farm had dramatically shifted almost totally onto Cindy. So she was carrying the weight of keeping up 161 acres and taking care of all of the animals and all the horses. So all of that is that's all.
And the home.
And on top of that, take care of the house and still go preach on Wednesday nights and study and entertain and help organize and do all the stuff that was going on in our lives. So all that's been let go. We had to let go of a lot of things.
Yes.
Here's the thing that we've learned. When I walked out of that doctor's office that day, I thought that my life was coming to an end. What I've discovered is that God's plan was not that my life end, just that my life change. Mm-hmm. And I've got to tell you, the change has been for the better. Mm-hmm. And now I'm beginning to get excited about the future again. Mm-hmm. And the whole purpose. But see, I found hope in the middle of this battle. And the purpose of this website, these videos, the blogs that we're writing, the purpose is that I want to create an epidemic of hope for people that are facing similar battles or people that know someone who's going through a similar battle. That's what we're trying to do. That's what I hope you'll find in the midst of all of this.